Hello and welcome to episode 208 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's show is sponsored by Omnipod, Dexcom, and Dancing for Diabetes. You can find out more at myomnipod.com/juicebox, dexcom.com/juicebox, or dancing4diabetes.com. There'll be more about the sponsors during the show, and you can always find links to all of the sponsors and anything spoken about today on the podcast in your show notes. Today I'm speaking with Hannah. She's 25 years old and has had type 1 diabetes for over a decade. And just recently, her 51-year-old mother was diagnosed. This is just a really good, comfortable conversation. Goes in a couple of different directions. It's funny, it's lighthearted. Hannah shares some things that she doesn't like. Actually, there's some things I think she hates, which is why this episode is called Hannah Hates Everything. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise, and to always consult a physician before making changes to your medical plan or being bold with insulin. So Arden's in high school now.
Right.
And they're on these block days. By the way, we're recording, Hannah. Hi.
Okay, great.
They're on these block days now, and the schedule changes like every day. And sometimes she has 2 block like classes that split in the middle, and you leave for lunch. And she's still trying to figure the whole thing out.
Right.
So a few minutes ago, I get, hey, lunch is in like 7 minutes. And I said, okay, do 10.5 units, extend that. Let's do 20% now, do the rest over an hour. And I was like, and look for another text maybe during lunch because we might need a little more insulin. And that was all I heard.
Okay.
5-10 minutes later, I get this text. Oh, shit. Which, by the way, I can't say on the podcast, so I'll have to bleep that out.
Edit.
Dad, I'm wrong. Lunch isn't soon. I got my times mixed up.
Oh, no. And she already bolus?
Well, but we did an extended bolus. So she only put in 20% of 10.5 units. So I'm going to say 2 units.
2, yeah.
Right? And her blood sugar is 125 right now. 2 units
okay.
is too much for 125. So I was like, cancel the extended bolus. And she's like, lunch isn't for like a half an hour. I said, let's temp basal off for a half an hour. This might catch it. It probably isn't going to. And she might need juice before lunch.
Right.
But I laughed because of
Yeah, that is actually really funny. The panic sets in and you're like, I have no idea what to do.
Well, and she's having such a tough time, not a tough time, but it's such a different thing for her. Life has just changed a lot
right.
in high school. Because the other day, she got a little low in the morning. And by a little low, I mean, she was like 74 and she was sort of like just sitting there.
Right.
And I thought, this is fine. We'll live with this. And I lost track of when lunch was. So she goes from 74 to diagonal up to 80 to 85. I was like, so I started thinking, man, I might have to bolus before lunch. Then all of a sudden it's 90 and 95. And I'm texting, I'm like, Arden. She's not answering. Like 15 minutes goes by. She's 110. She's 115. I say, I finally send like a loud tone. I'm like, oh my God, is she in lunch? And I'm like, hey, and I get this text back. She goes, oh, I forgot the bolus.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, when's lunch? She's like, lunch is over.
So she completely ate everything and just never.
Yes, the very first time in her, I swear to you, in her life.
We've all done it.
Absolutely.
I've done it.
She sat down and she noshed away. And and so I did this, I over bolused. I added a temp basal, but here was the irritating, not the irritating part, but the part that made it worse. As this was all happening, I was sitting down in the dentist chair for 2.5 hour procedure.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm now loading her up with insulin. She's walking back to class, and I'm saying to my dentist, listen, you're going to see me raise my wrist up every once in a while to look at my watch. And I hope you don't mind. I might have to text during this. I swear to God, and it worked out great. Actually, during that, I mean, try to imagine, she ate a full meal, and people who listen,
right.
Arden was eating sandwiches and chips and cookies and fruit and all kinds of carbs. And so her blood sugar went from that 74 to 285.
Wow.
And I actually got it to come back and lay down at 130 in less than 2 hours.
That's impressive.
Thank you very much. But here was the really great takeaway from it. Don't worry, this won't take away from your interview.
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. It's like, I don't care. What was really great about it was, I know this sounds crazy, but I got to see how her blood sugar acted with the meal without the insulin.
Right.
And so I really looked hard at that graph, and I was like, oh, it helped me understand how to extend boluses out better and where the insulin needed to go in to sort of match when the blood sugar tried to
peak.
rise. It was really great.
Yeah.
I was actually happy it happened.
Interesting. Most of us don't say that after.
Well, it's all perspective. You really,
true.
If you've listened at all, and I know you do, but you can't think of these things as mistakes, and you have to think of them as data. So I just thought, okay, I handled it. Now, what can I learn from this?
Right.
I think it's a reverse engineered look at what I try to explain to people, which is you have to look at the data to decide what to do next, and you can't. So I had a mistake. Obviously, it was a pretty egregious one in the world of diabetes, like not taking insulin for food. And it just offered so much back if you can kind of control your emotions and not like devolve into like a puddle on the floor going,
Right, freak out.
Yeah, we screwed up. We freaked out and messed this up. Anyway, 6 minutes in, go ahead and introduce yourself. Dancing for Diabetes' mission is to spread awareness through the art of dance to better educate the community, raise funds to find a cure, and inspire those with diabetes to live healthy and active lives. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and at dancingfordiabetes.com. That's dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com.
I'm Hannah. I am 25 years old, and I've been a type 1 diabetic since I was 11.
Okay.
So almost half my life now. Well, over half my life.
I like how you were like 11. Like, I think I was 11. I'm pretty sure.
It was like right before my 12th birthday. So I say I was 11, but it's kind of cheating.
It's not cheating. So okay, hold on. I'll do the math for myself. 13 years. And you have more than that, like, going on. So, like, we'll get to everything. But tell me a little bit first about... By the way, at this point now, when people come on, if you don't have, like, multiple stories around diabetes, boring.
Super boring. I think I am boring, but, I mean, new things happen all the time. And I've done a lot of different things. So my struggle with diabetes has been different. Just because I've gone from... Obviously, I was in 6th grade when I was diagnosed, middle school, high school. I did 4 years of college. I came home for 6 months. Then I did 18 months of master's. I'm working on my master's degree. And now I'm entering my 2nd year of working in the workforce.
Yeah, you're like a real person. You did a whole bunch of stuff.
Been all over the place.
No kidding. You said master's, and I was like, oh, she's a pro golfer.
No, I wish. That would be cooler, I think.
I know nothing about golf. I've never watched a golf, would you call it a tournament, a match of my life. And yet when you said Masters, I was like, oh, the Green Jackets.
Oh, yeah, that one. No, different. I do work at a golf course now. I work in the event side. Yeah, so I do like the events at a country club. But I am not a good golfer.
Can you imagine the randomness of this podcast? I did not know that about you, and I still to this moment don't know why the word Masters made me think of golf.
I don't know. It was meant to be, apparently.
Do you know what I just learned here? I'm so good at this that even when I don't know what I'm doing, I still know what I'm doing. It's fascinating.
There you go.
Yeah.
I agree.
I wonder how many people won't hear the sarcasm in my statement, and later I will get a review that's like, this guy's so full of himself, he thought...
Whatever.
So, okay, so we'll unpack a little bit, right? So,
Sure.
11, 12 years old, diagnosed. I find that to be an interesting time because I'm assuming you're just about to get your period for the first time, if you hadn't already just gotten it in that time.
I hadn't gotten it. I got it about a year later when I was in 7th grade. So it was I got type 1 diabetes as puberty was sort of beginning. I don't know how that differs from people who aren't in puberty, but it was an interesting time. I look back and I feel lucky because I had my full parent support. It wasn't the worst time because I've now lived longer with it than I have without. So I feel like I've been able to cope because I know no different right now. So, I mean, I see the positive.
Cool. I was just wondering because I think everyone Hannah's dead. What happened? Were you all right? There was
Me?
Yeah, there was a loud noise on your end.
Oh, sorry. No, I don't know.
It's fine.
I just got the new iPhone, so I don't actually know what I'm doing.
So you using Skype with your iPhone and like just
Headphones.
yeah? Are they wired or AirPods?
They're wired.
Sounds great.
Oh, good.
This is for everybody else who's listening. Don't be sorry. Sometimes the wired headphone though can like hit your clothing and make a noise. Like that's
Oh, got it.
probably what it was. Anyway, first of all, I think it's incredibly interesting because you're probably honeymooning as you're diagnosed, and then puberty begins and it changes things, but you didn't really know it changed things because it's right when you started. So there was no difference for you. Whereas people who have little kids who, I always find it interesting when someone's like, Mike, here's my kid's graph. He's 8. Look how easy this is. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it is, but, and well done and all, but like, it's going to get harder, there's going to be more like moving pieces at some point. It's just, you didn't get to see it with the,
Yep, never saw that.
You didn't get the training wheels version of diabetes. You got the plus I wanted to prove that I could say period without being uncomfortable. Because
it's not a big deal.
I got feedback from someone. And she was like, apparently I say lady time a lot because I find that amusing, but apparently everyone doesn't find that amusing. So I got this note the other day. I used the word period in a podcast, and I get this 2-sentence note from a person who's just like, "Hey, well done using the word period today in the podcast instead of lady time." And I was like, I didn't know that bothered people. So I'm very sorry.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know. And I was like, are you kidding me? I can't, I'm trying. I'm really trying.
Well, we did it. You used it and we moved on.
I'm feeling pretty good about it. Yeah. But so you start out 13 years ago. That's right on the edge. Did you have early CGM technology or how did you start?
Nope.
No.
I started with needles in the hospital, and I actually did that for about 2 years, just solely finger pricking and needles.
How did that go?
I don't have horrid memories of it. It was okay. I didn't know any better. I didn't know there were other things to offer. I didn't get a great education in the hospital. But like I said, what they taught me was all we knew. So my dad had to overcome his fear of needles pretty quickly. So that was probably the biggest hurdle and the one that I actually remember. But after that, my parents only did my shots for a couple months, and then I kind of just took over, and they would help with the math, but I just started kind of doing everything myself.
Giving yourself the insulin. Do you feel like that was your decision, or was it them trying to be like, hey, you really need to do this? Do you remember?
No, it was definitely not them pushing it off on me. It was definitely more of I can do this, so I'm going to do this. I had a very sheltered upbringing. I still am very sheltered on that end, but they definitely did not force me to do that. It was definitely my decision.
Tell me how you were sheltered, if you can. Give me one great example. Let me give you one. I believe my wife was sheltered growing up. When I met her and we were older, one day, this was a very nice day, I said to her, I'm like, let's go to the park. And she said, okay. And I picked her up at her house and I drove to this park that was in the town we grew up in. And she's like, I didn't know this was here. It was a mile from our home. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, our parents don't let us drive this direction. I'm like, what does that even mean? We only lived in a very small place. There was only a couple of directions you could go. How were you sheltered?
I think this story is funny. So after I was diagnosed, I still played soccer. I did all of that. And at one practice, my blood sugar was just really high. So my parents were like, sit out. Let's try to drink water and try to get it down. So I was sitting out, and one of my soccer friends came over and said, why are you sitting out? Are you okay? And I was like, oh, I'm so high, I have to sit out. And she started laughing, and I was like, why is this so funny? And she was like, oh, I thought you were talking about pot, you would smoke so much pot. And I was like, I don't even know what pot is. What are you talking about? I'm just high. And I kept saying it. And my parents had to be like, no, she thinks it's something else. It never clicked for me because I had no idea what that was.
I see. Okay. Well, I think that's a good kind of sheltered.
Just one. Yeah, no, that's a good one. But just in general, I'm the oldest of 3 girls. So everything was new to my parents with me. And now I see my 18-year-old sister and I'm like, oh, I never would have done that or known that or any of that.
So common for like a family that's spread out over a few kids. Like, right.
Yeah.
The first one, you're like, don't touch that. Don't do that. Like by your second kid, you're dropping the pacifier on the ground and there's like stuff stuck to it and you're like wiping it on your shirt and licking it, and handing it back to the kid. You're like, here, this is completely clean now.
Yep. Very true here.
That's so cool. So, okay. So you have 2 younger sisters?
I have 2 younger sisters.
Is there any other endocrine issues in your family?
No, there's none on either side or within my immediate family. Well, there is now. When I was diagnosed, there was nothing.
Okay.
It was very random.
But someone, since you were just
yeah,
you.
So almost 2 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 51.
See, people, you got to come hard with the story if you want to be on the podcast. And so So your mom, did she get a straight diagnosis or was it a confusing time? I don't want you to tell too much of her story.
No, yeah, I don't want to. Well, I can tell her story because it's I understand it. But she got really sick and started losing like a ton of weight. Where everybody was like, "Oh my God, you look so good! You look so good!" And like she had been exercising and stuff to give her credit, but she became like super lethargic, which obviously wasn't like her. She was drinking a bunch of like normal water liquid, and she's not like a water drinker. And my dad and I never saw the signs, which is so weird to say, but I think it was so long ago that I was diagnosed, we weren't really looking for them.
Mm-hmm.
So she got like really sick, and my dad took her to the urgent care, and then they sent her straight to the ER. And it was kind of confusing because we all kind of assumed it would be type 2. Just because she is a little older, she's a little bit overweight, and she's had like those signs, but it's full-blown type 1 diabetes.
And okay. So we'll get back to mom in a little bit. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, so you're taking care of yourself back when you were 13. I'm like Pulp Fiction this today. Like, well, John Travolta's dead, then he's alive. I'm going back and forth, but that's okay. I'm feeling it. My daughter Arden is about to turn 15 years old, and she's been using the Omnipod insulin management system since she was 4 years old. If you have diabetes and your body requires insulin, you need to know about the Omnipod. It can make your diabetes a smaller and more manageable part of your life. People with type 1 or insulin-dependent type 2 diabetes, along with caregivers of both children and adults, are choosing pod therapy as a simple, smart, and discreet way to control their insulin and manage their diabetes. With the Omnipod, you have a proven, reliable insulin management system that can provide up to 72 hours of continuous insulin delivery. And it all starts with a tubeless, wearable pod that is waterproof and discreet. Controlled by Omnipod's personal diabetes manager, you can accomplish everyday tasks like carb counting, bolusing, basal increases and decreases, and much more. The best part is you don't have to take my word for it. You can go to myomnipod.com/juicebox or click on the links in your show notes. And when you do, Omnipod will send you out a free, no obligation demonstration pod. You'll be able to try it on, wear it, and see what you think. Then you'll be able to decide if that guy on the podcast told me the truth or not. I did, by the way. But it's better if you get to see it for yourself. myomnipod.com/juicebox. Try it today. You will not be sorry. Arden has been using the Omnipod for 11 years. It is an incredible tool and at the core of how we manage her health and happiness. Plus, the demo's free and there's no obligation. So what do you have to lose? You're in middle school, getting ready to go into high school with diabetes. Did you have a comfortable time in school, or was it an issue, or how did it go?
Well, I was in public school through 8th grade. So they had like the public school nurse that would come around once in a while. And every day I was supposed to go to the nurse's lounge to test. And then I was supposed to write my number in this book. And then I would do whatever I needed to there, and I'd go back to lunch. But I learned really quickly, nobody really cares or would check up on it. So I would go like every Friday and just write in random numbers for the week and kind of do everything myself at the lunch table. So very little supervision on that end. I didn't have a phone, so it's not like I would call my parents and say, how much insulin should I take? Or, I wasn't asking those questions. So it really was up to me to see what I was going to eat and then give myself that insulin shot.
How were your outcomes?
They weren't awful, but they weren't great either. Like my A1C probably sat around a 7.58 most of my, probably through high school. Like that was normal for me.
That's incredibly successful for a kid by themselves with
Yeah.
needles and a meter, don't you think?
Yeah, it wasn't awful. I mean, I hear like you and other people on the podcast talk about like 6 A1Cs, and I'm like, that's crazy. I never would have been able to do that when I was that age.
Sure.
But I look back and I'm also like, wow, I literally had a vial of insulin, a needle, and a blood sugar. I don't know what it's called.
A meter?
A meter. There you go. I use it so infrequently now. I don't even know what it is. But yeah, very, very different times.
Yeah, you were a low tech diabetes person for a long time. Just
very, very low tech.
Just carrying your like not even a pen. You were just like here.
Nope.
That's how Arden did it. We carried a vial of insulin with us and needles.
Yeah.
And that was what we did. And we had this little tiny meter that, looking back on it now, looked like it came out of like a diabetes bubblegum machine. Like I put 2 quarters in and I was like, click, click, click. Oh, look what we got, a little meter. It couldn't have been accurate.
That's really interesting.
It's ridiculous, right? But that's really, I think that's amazing, and I'll tell you why. Because you sort of took it over early on. You were like, look, I can do this. Let me do it. And your parents let it happen. Your health was reasonable. Did you have any crazy lows?
I mean, I would go low, but was normally at like swim practice or soccer practice. That's what I remember most.
Did you see that as just the cost of doing business? Like I get low at swim, that's what happens?
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Okay. You didn't consider like, wow, I bet you there's something we could be, and I'm not judging you. I don't think you should have been able to, but you didn't.
No, yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
nope.
Yeah.
Nothing like that.
And so that's the lack of, I would think that's the lack of data, right? Like
for sure.
Yeah. Like how do you make decisions like that if you can't see anything?
I don't know. I look back and I'm like, I don't think myself or my parents 100% knew exactly what we were doing or how serious everything I was doing was, because we were kind of just flying by the seat of our pants, but that was normal, so I didn't know it was. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. I think it's, even though it's not that long ago, it's very common. It's incredibly common. Even in the more rapid acting insulin age, you're blind, right? You just like, oh, I'll count these carbs and I'll put this insulin in and we'll see what happens. And oh, that's Hannah. Her blood sugar gets low while we're swimming. She'll eat something and be back in 15 minutes. Like
that's exactly what it was. Yeah, the coach knew. I knew. I kind of liked it because then I got to get out of practice and like chill and sit and have a snack, and like I enjoyed that. So I don't think I would have even wanted to fix it. I mean, I'm sure my parents would have, but like to me, that's just what happened every day, and that I would go do that.
Your diabetes was like a break from swimming. You're like, I just can't.
Exactly.
I
hated it. I hated competitive swimming. So to me, it was like a reward.
So tell me about that a little bit. You did this, but you didn't like it. Why? Was it something you had always done? Were your parents like, you're good at it, keep going? Like, what was the?
No, I wasn't particularly good at it. My mom and her sisters grew up competitively swimming. So she put us all in it. So we did it, and I did it through like my sophomore year of high school, but I was also competitively playing soccer, which was much more serious. So I would never go to swim practice.
Did you like soccer?
No, like I have regrets. I wish I didn't play soccer or that competitively, but it was fine, and I did it. I have a lot of weird feelings about the whole like how competitive youth sports are. If you want my thoughts on that,
no, I do, and let me tell you why. Right, so. My son started playing baseball when he was 3.
Okay.
And now today he's a freshman in college and he plays baseball at his college.
Which is great.
And Arden started, and he it's such a part of who he is. It's part of the fabric of who he is.
Right.
And Arden started playing softball when she was, I don't know, 5. And is markedly good at it. Like I think it wouldn't be a problem for Arden to play softball in college at some point in her future.
Sure.
But she's at this point now, she's 14, and she starts saying, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And I was like, okay, well, we're not going to, make you do something. Like it's not a big deal. What we have said is you need to be active in something. Right, like your life can't be your life can't be school and Netflix. Like we're not going to be okay with that. Unless you're going to run in place while you're watching the Netflix, then okay. And so
Just
we're
get a
trying
treadmill.
Well, yeah, it'd be great. Just a treadmill with a laptop. I'm like, here you go. By the way, that would make my life so much easier. So, I just sit there. I'm like, whenever you can think of something else that you'd like to replace softball with, so that you're moving and you're active and you're social, and like, just tell me what that thing is, and I'd be happy for you to do it. It doesn't matter to me. I'll take you to the gym if you want to go to the gym. Like it doesn't matter.
Right.
And then she's like, oh, I'll just play softball. But, and that happens like year upon year. And then, when she was 12, her and her team were, I think, 2 wins away from going to the Little League World Series. Like, they were like, good, and then you keep playing and then you move on to different teams and you're doing all this stuff. And recently, again, she was like, I don't want to play softball. And I was like, well, then don't play softball. Just tell me something else you're going to do. I'm like, you have type 1 diabetes. Like, you have to understand that activity needs to be a part of your daily routine or your weekly schedule. Like, it can't it can't be an afterthought. And besides that, Hannah, and you might, as a young girl, know this better than anybody, there's a lot more sexuality around young girls than I expected growing up, and that I didn't see because I had a son the first time. And I don't mean my daughter, but I mean the people tangentially related to her, and some of the people she knows are way more active, and it's concerning as a parent. Like, so part of me wants her busy doing things.
Right.
And I'm much happier to think that she's busy doing them with a bunch of other girls. And right? Instead of like the opposite of like, some aggro boy who's 14 and is like, hey, come here.
Yep.
Do you want to kiss me? I would rather, and by the way, if one of the girls tries to kiss her, again, that seems better to me than if a boy tries, right? But the point is that I just want her to stay active, right?
Right.
And then I watch her play, and unlike you in swimming, and I'm sorry, Arden's really good at softball.
Right.
And so I have this weird parenting feeling where I think, at what point is it incumbent upon me to just tell her, okay, quit and find something else if this is how you think of it? And at what point is it not responsible of me to let her walk away from something that she is so good at that could really propel her in different directions before she knows exactly how she feels about it? Because, and hold on one second, because now I have to do the lunch bolus. Now we can bolus, she says. Okay. So she must have got 2 units. So bolus 8.5 extend. The 2 units has got to be in already because she went from 121 to 114. So let's do 0% now and the rest over an hour. That way this whole 8.5 will go in over the next 30 minutes. The two's got to be in there being a pre-bolus already. Hold basal back on. This is going to be a mess, Hannah. If I can get this done, I'm going to be pretty impressed with myself. So that's the other side of it, right? Like, like if you were incredibly good at math and you told your mom in like your junior year of high school, like, I don't like math, I might be like, well, too bad, Hannah, keep taking math because it's a really great skill and you excel at it. And you might then later come back to me in your mid-20s and go, thank God you kept me in math because, as I mature, etc. So like I'm stuck in that space. And I start talking to other parents with girls at this age. And I tell them this kind of story in a way that makes me think like I'm going to be the only one saying it. And I have not yet met one person who hasn't told me, oh, my daughter complains about softball constantly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, so they're all complaining about, wait a minute.
It's just a like, teenage thing.
Well, that's what I'm...
Preteen.
Right. Like, is this just where she is in her life situation? And so do I have to like... So I'm just sticking with the look. You keep doing this until you can find something else to replace it with.
I think that's great. Yeah, I do. Because if she really doesn't like it, she's going to find something else. But it doesn't seem like there's a big rush. So she obviously enjoys it to some extent.
I say that. I'm like, you're smiling and laughing and doing great.
Yeah.
And she goes, no, I'm not. I'm like, why are you being difficult?
I think that's just a girl preteen teen thing.
I hope so. The other night,
Yeah.
she's talking to me yesterday about something and being really harsh to me. And I said, listen, I'm already married to your mom. I don't need you doing this too. You know, like I have enough people policing my thoughts and actions. Like maybe you could leave me alone.
You better get used to it because it's just starting.
I told her, I was like, get older, find a boy and ruin his life, but leave me alone.
Find someone else. Yeah. My dad did it 3 times. I don't know how he did it.
Oh my God. Yeah, he's probably either just checked out or a very strong guy, one or the other. Do you ever notice him staring through you all? Like, I don't really hear you. Or
he doesn't hear us, actually. He's really good at tuning my mom out, and it's a big, where I was like, you don't listen. He's like, I don't know, sorry, but it's his coping mechanism. For sure. No, it for sure is. And I realize it now, but when I was growing up, I'm like, you're not listening to me. But it was...
Your dad's somewhere going, I'm keeping my family together, and the way I'm doing it is by not listening to them.
No, he's very patient. I think that's what's got him so far.
That's very nice. So, okay, so you have tell me a little more. Like, you played soccer, but you didn't enjoy it.
But I knew wasn't enjoying it, but it was never a question. Nobody was like, hey, you still like it? You want to do it this season? It was like, I played competitively. The team was good. And I just stayed with the same team from, I think I was like 9 until I was 17. So it was never like a question of, oh, you're going to leave the team. It was always like, we do the same thing year after year.
Gotcha. Did you feel like if you left, those other girls would not treat you well?
No, I wasn't even really so worried about that. It never even left my mind that I would not play, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. It's a weird thing to look back on. So
when you look back, though, you like if the you are today was back then, you'd be telling that girl, hey, you got to get out of this.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't have survived that long. I'm a very different person, a lot more vocal. Obviously different than I was at 15. But whenever it comes up, or my parents and I are in the car and we drive by like a little soccer game, I'm always like, oh my God, those days. And they kind of do the same thing. They're like, oh man, what a time. Like, they see it because my dad was so wrapped up in it. He was part of the club. Like, it was just who we were. It was so part of my identity. It never would have left.
I don't have that going on. I'm the guy who's slightly off to the side complaining for 3 hours. Like, just to anyone to listen. Like, this is how it starts. We pull up at a field. The first thing I say is, oh, where are we now? What hellhole have we found ourselves in this time? By the way, 2 weeks ago, it was a field next to where they parked the trash trucks for this town that we were in.
Oh, great.
I was like, you have to be kidding me. And like, you know, and then they're playing, and I always have the opposite effect. I'm like, this is meaningless. Like, who cares if they win or if they lose? Like, I care about, like, for me, sports is repetition when you're learning it. Like, you just need to do it. It doesn't matter if you win or you lose or what happens. I don't care about any of that. I just think you need to play. And at the same time, I don't want to drive more than 20 minits to do it. Once I'm outside of a 20-minute window, I'm like, what are we doing? Where are we going? Yeah. Like, if I have to get up early on a Saturday, I'm just like, what is wrong with the people who scheduled this? Like, do they have no life? Do they not like sleeping? I would like to sleep. I'm
all of the above.
Oh, I complain so much. I'm so good at the complaining part of it. Anyway.
But it's so funny how, like, parents do go along with it. Like, you'll complain, but we'll still wake up at 5 a.m. and be in Temecula for a tournament. Like, it was just something we did.
Oh, yeah, we're all insane. Everyone's
nuts.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
So silly.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. And
so silly.
And so what I ended up telling Arden was, like, I said, look, you have to see how this worked. So for my son, it elevated the college he went into. Like, my son's a very good student. But he's not an amazing student, and he doesn't love school. He's not like that kid who's like, look at my perfect grades, I'm so happy. Like he gets very good grades, but he wants to be playing baseball.
Right.
And so baseball got him into, I have to say, I think he could have been accepted to most of the schools that were recruiting him, but he was being recruited by schools he didn't have a chance of getting into academically.
Okay.
And baseball propelled him into that. Like, it made up that last little bit of distance for him. He was close, but not right there.
Right, which is the goal, I think, of every parent putting their kid through.
That makes sense to me, Hannah, and I would easily marry you if my wife wasn't around because you seem like you are a very sensible person. But most people are like, there's glory, and this is going to happen, and money, and I'm like, that's not what's going to happen. Like,
no.
Yeah, hold yourself together a little bit. But so I say to Arden the same thing. I'm like, look, I think you're in a similar space where this could help you get over a hump when you're going into college. I said to her, I'm like, once you get in, I don't care if you quit the softball team 20 minutes later, which, by the way, no one should hear, because then she will never get recruited if she tries to do it. But I'm like, if you don't like it, you don't like it. You don't have to do it for 4 years.
Well, and I also think, I think it's a good thing, even if she gets there and she does want to do it for 4 years, like the structure it gives, the help with academics, like the team bonding. I went to college with no team and it sucked. I hated college. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of positives in having that going into college.
Yeah, I have to say that I see that with my son already in the first 5 weeks, where he just showed up where people were already on his side.
Yeah.
And there was somebody there. There was a lot of value to it, and I believe there still is. But okay. All right, so let's figure this out. So you go to college. You didn't like Hannah. The episode title is very close to Hannah doesn't like anything. But
I know, it's so true. I kind of am like that. I'm not a negative person, but I don't like a lot of things. I don't know.
Here, I'll admit to something. I don't like food that much.
Oh no, I'm not on the same page.
I eat so I don't die. But at the beginning of the Jetsons, where they cut that pill in half, I'm like, oh, why can't someone invent that? Like, that would be amazing. I forced myself to eat breakfast this morning. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do it because I know I have to. And then I just took
oh my gosh, I wish I was that way.
I scrambled 2 eggs and I put them in a wrap, and I stood and ate them like they were like a beef jerky stick. I was just like, let me just get this in so I don't die.
Yuck.
Anyway, so you didn't like swimming and you weren't good at it. You didn't like soccer, but you were good at it. I'm assuming you didn't like diabetes, but you were pretty good at that. You went to college. You didn't like college. Why didn't you like college?
Just like I said, I was very sheltered, and I went to college 6 hours away from my house. I'd never been away from any family, any parents. I had no support system built in college. I kind of got dropped off. We all cried. My parents left. It's very traumatic in my head, and I would call home every night crying, like, come on, let me come home. And my dad, very patient, would be like, I can't do anything for you. This is good for you. It'll get better. And it never really got better. It was hard every single year going back. But I committed.
Scratch marks on the back of your dorm room door?
Probably. No, I scared my freshman year roommate. I think she thought I had a mental imbalance and was like, do you need help? Do you want help? What? It was just, it was traumatic.
Do you want a new roommate? Could you get the heck out of here, please?
Probably. No, we're still friends. I think she got over that, but
good.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very weird time in someone's life.
I thought when Cole left, I said to somebody, so I was talking to my brother last night, and I said to my brother, I'm like, it dawned on me pretty quickly that everything in his life, absolutely everything in his life changed in a split second. There was nothing the same when we got there that from the day before. He basically started being a person over again. It was
it's
really
crazy. Yeah. It is. You have to rebuild yourself. There was one girl from my high school, which I went to a tiny Catholic all-girls school, so I was also coming from that environment, thrown into sort of the college environment where there's a boy living next door to me, and I have a communal bathroom, and my dinner is in the middle of campus, and I have to walk there to get it. It was just, everything was different.
No, I see that. I also see on top of that, my son is working so hard. They have a scrimmage coming up this weekend. And his whole life is being a starter in that scrimmage. He's like, if I'm a starter in that scrimmage, then that's how they think of me for the spring. And you could see all this and he's a really compassionate kid too. So he's like, I feel bad for the kids who I don't think have any shot. And I was like, oh my God, there's so much going on. I'm like, I really just have a podcast, and then I do the dishes, and then I go grocery shopping. That's my life is actually much easier. But okay, so you're off at college. What were you studying?
I went in as some sort of science major. I don't even know what I thought I wanted. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, like everybody does. I quickly failed out of chemistry. I had to withdraw, so that if I couldn't get through that, I couldn't get through a science major. So I was undecided for a year and a half, and then I ended up being a kinesiology major.
Okay. Is it fair to say
sports science?
Is it fair to say you didn't like chemistry?
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
Add that to the. I wish.
Add it to the list.
Yeah, I actually should make a list. But okay. So how was at that point? 5 years into your diabetes, you weren't still with your needles and your vials, or were you?
No. So when I was in 8th grade, I got the Medtronic pump, which was very quickly life-changing. I learned that. I was on Medtronic for 8 years, and then I recently just switched over to the T-Slim with Tandem. So I've been on a pump.
The little flat one, the T-Slim.
Yeah, it has like a screen, a fancy screen and all of that.
And so you had a pump you're using, and
Yep.
so were you using the Medtronic CGM?
No,
Okay.
I wasn't. My dad tried it to get me on the Dexcom right when it first came out. Like, the needle was so long, it would have freaked anybody out. And when it went in, it was the most painful thing ever. And I said, I'm never doing that again. So he really tried, but I said, I'm never doing that again. That is the worst thing. So I think that's why it also took me so long to get on the next Dexcom, because I just started using it like 2 years ago.
Okay, so did you start at the G5?
I started the G5.
Okay, are you still with the 5 now, or do you have the 6? So my daughter's in high school now. And with high school comes different privileges, like being able to wander out of a class in the morning, go to the cafeteria, and buy yourself some breakfast. And so what young girl wouldn't want to go down and get a big old chocolate chip muffin in the morning? So she sent me a text and said, Dad, I want to go get something to eat. I was like, right on, go. We made a little bolus based on what her Dexcom CGM said her blood sugar was, just to get a pre-bolus going. And then she got to the cafeteria. She says, I'm going to get this chocolate chip muffin. How big is it? I asked her. I don't know. It's pretty big. How big? I don't know. Big. How many carbs does it have? I don't know. It doesn't have a package. So based on historical knowledge that I have of my daughter, we bolused the amount of insulin that we thought was going to be right for this muffin, but we weren't correct. Not completely. And soon she needed more insulin. But how did I know that? Because the data coming back from her Dexcom CGM showed me a rise in her blood sugar. We were able to cut that rise off and put it to an end, bringing her blood sugar back down to where we wanted it. We did that remotely while she was at school and I was at home, because the Dexcom has a share and follow feature that's available for Android and iPhone. It's amazing, right? My daughter got to try a completely new food on her own. She did not have to limit herself, and it didn't drive her blood sugar through the roof because we were able to see what direction her blood sugar was moving and how fast it was going with the Dexcom G6. I want you to go to dexcom.com/juicebox or click on the links in your show notes to get started today with the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. Your results may vary, but in my opinion, there's nothing better.
I'm on the 6.
Okay, so you have a good perspective. So from that first Dexcom that you harpooned yourself with all those years ago, and you were like, I hate this. And
it was so bad.
Right. And to now, can you describe to people the difference between the G6 and what you started with, like all those years ago?
I really can't, because it was such an awful experience. I only did it once, and I said, I'll never do that again.
Gotcha.
Which I didn't. I never let him try to put it on me again.
Right.
But then I think I started listening to your podcast and like online stuff about how far Dexcom had actually come. So when I got the G5 and I still had my dad help me put it on, I was like, oh, that was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. And then, as you know, you see all these numbers and it's like, it's life-changing.
Right. And then the 6 is, for you, do you find it?
It's crazy.
Close to painless?
Yeah, I can do it myself. So I still live at home, so my dad was putting the G5 on me every single time I had to do it because it freaked me out, that clicking noise. I couldn't get over it. I can do everything else, but I couldn't get over the sensor, but I really wanted it. So He would do that for me, and now I can do it myself, which I'm 25, and I feel really proud of it.
Well, you should. First of all, you should. And I think that that's amazing that he helped you. And then I think it also proves something that I say here a lot, which is some things just can't be rushed, right?
Right.
You know, every once in a while, I can feel the internet stares at me, right? Well, you're involved in your daughter's maintenance, her moment-to-moment decisions. How is she ever going to learn it? And I'm like, well, she's going to learn it the same way she learns everything else, like over time. Like, I always think of the kids have this great way at the beginning of the school year. They come home in the first couple of weeks and they're like, this math class sucks. I'm not learning anything. The teacher's bad. And I'm like, okay. And then at the end of the year, they understand everything that they need to understand for that year. And I always ask them, I always stop and point out, it's like, remember at the beginning of the year, you couldn't do this. Yes. I said, you can do it now, right? Do you remember the moment when you learned to do it? And they don't know. I said, because it took the whole year. It took little moments and little experiences and failures and successes to build up this new idea in their head. I think diabetes is the same way. I trust that one day Arden's going to just sort of like you did with the needles, go, hey, you know what? I really do know how to do this. Like, it's okay. Like, go ahead. She'll release me. She'll just be like, go ahead, run around in the field till you die, which will probably be like a week and a half. Like, there's no way I'll make it much longer, But I think that's the idea, that one day she'll be like, hey, I really do get this the way you get it now, and let's be done. And I don't know why there has to be a rush to that. Like, why do people say, well, they're 15, they have to know. They're 16, they have to know. Like, what's the big deal that you were 23 and you were like, all right, Dad, I'm going to pull my pants down now and I need you to jam this Dexcom thing on me because I can't do it yet. And look at you. Like, it was probably some time and some comfort, but then the technology moved on to a place where you thought, okay, well, I can do this myself.
Which, I totally can.
And I don't see that that's a problem. Like, you joked about it, like, oh, I'm 25, and I'm like, I think that's great. I think it's fine. I think if your dad was willing to do it, then he's a great person, and you are too for understanding you needed some help.
Well, yeah, I mean, it worked for me, like at where I am in my life. Like, I feel like Dexcom is moving on and all of that, and I can move with it.
Right.
And I actually feel really lucky that he wanted to do that and was like okay with doing it, because like I said, he has this awful fear of needles, and he never once was like, oh man, I don't think I can do it. Like, every time he came home from work, I'm like, please help me, and he was always there to do it. And I think he's happy to, because I don't include him in a lot of diabetes management anymore, so it's like a little thing we had.
Listen, your dad is willing to do anything for you except listen to you and pick you up from college when you're crying on the phone.
Yes.
Other than that, he's right there.
He'll answer the phone, which he continued to answer the phone. He just wouldn't come get me.
He wouldn't come get me. Do you think they hung up the phone afterwards and they're like, oh, this girl, oh my God, I hope the other two aren't like this?
No, well, yes, I'm sure they said that to themselves, but no, my mom was a mess too, so he was the only like sane one that could kind of talk us down.
I'll tell you right now, it's impressive, because the other side of it is, we were driving Cole to college. Like, I was okay. Like, it was a stoic kind of drive. Like, people were pretty quiet, but then you got there and you're making his bed and getting his stuff together and doing all the things he needs to do, and the school's kicking you out in a couple of hours. They're not letting you stay too long. And we're leaving, and I'm thinking, like, don't be upset. Like, he doesn't need to feel upset as we're leaving, like that kind of thing. But still, when I hugged him, I was like, I started off with like, okay, like, we'll be back in a couple weeks for family weekend. And I ended with like, I love you. I'm so sorry. Just like, and we're driving home, and I'm doing okay for like the first 45 minutes, and I'm driving along. And then suddenly an amount of tears that is hard to put into words started. I wasn't crying, but they were flowing out of my eyes, down my cheeks. My shirt was wet. Like, and I wasn't crying. It was just, I couldn't stop it. And then I thought, okay, like, I'm going to stop this. Like, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to stop it. And I went to take a deep breath and I couldn't even draw in air. And when I tried, I started crying. And then I cried for like 20 minutes while I was driving the car. Not like, oh, woe is me, forehead, hand, like, like down south Southern belle crying. But I was just like, like the whole way. And all I could think was, why did I leave him there? Like, it felt like such a, like, I knew it was a great situation for him. I knew it was what he was supposed to be doing, but I couldn't get over the feeling that I shouldn't have done it. And then I had two incredibly weird thoughts. The one was that I hadn't done enough for him. Like, that I had missed opportunities to make him more prepared for the world. Couldn't shake that feeling.
Okay.
And then my father, who left us when I was 13. I was 13. My brother was 8. My other brother was 3. My dad just bailed on us. And all I could think was, I don't know how he did that. Like, forget the bigger, like, existential question. I'm like, how did he bring himself to leave? And I thought, God, he must have really not liked us. Because, like...
That's really bad. I shouldn't have laughed.
No, I'm laughing because I couldn't fathom how he could have done that. Like
Right.
because
Right.
I could barely leave my son in what is probably the best situation in the world for him, where he's completely safe, completely comforted, doing things that he loves, and yet I felt like I was abandoning him. I
Yeah.
just thought like, wow, my dad must have had, and I'm adopted, by the way. I'm proud to say that because
Okay.
I'm not attached to this feeling like through blood. But I thought he must have or lack. My father must have had or lacked something in his brain that let him feel that stopped him, because I don't know how he could have done that. It was astonishing. But my wife's like, "Do you want me to drive?" And I'm like, "I'm fine." And then we get home and everybody's all weepy and weird, and it sort of feels like he died for some reason. Like it's very strange. And then my wife finally goes, Kelly goes to bed, Arden goes to bed, and I just go in my son's room and sit on the floor and cry for like
Oh,
another hour. And then I
that's
go to bed.
awful.
I've been a stay-at-home dad for like 18 years. To be fair,
Right.
I'm pretty much a lady. And so like a mom. And so I'm just like all broken up and everything. And now it's better. It's like 5 or 6 weeks later and I don't cry anymore and it's fine.
Yeah, no, time gives it perspective.
But your dad, what I'm saying is your father must have had that's a ton of resolve, because if my son started calling me and begging me to come home, I'd be like, "See, I knew we made a mistake. I'm gonna
He
go handle it right now."
he really thought it was like the right thing for me. Like he thought I had made the right decision. He believed it was. He thought and it wasn't a bad place. Like nothing bad was happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like I didn't fit in. It was just a lot of things. So I didn't eat. I couldn't eat for like 3 weeks. It was just, yeah, it was traumatic.
Was any of the I don't fit in feelings stemming from diabetes, or was it just
No,
nothing?
none were. I've never really had that like problem with diabetes where I feel like I'm different or outside. Like it just kind of is who I am. And with college, it wasn't a big deal until I wasn't eating and then I was low all the time. And I don't think that helped with like hormones and being in a new place. So I think it was just like everything factoring in.
And did it at any point get, I don't want to say better, but did you get accustomed to it? Was it?
Yeah, I definitely adjusted. It didn't mean I like wanted to be there or would have made the choice to be there if I didn't feel like the pressure to be there
Okay.
for my own self.
And kinesiology, so you build Kinects? Is that what you do? Those little toys?
Just kind of similar.
Is that similar?
No.
Can you explain to everybody what that is?
It's essentially sports science. I did more of like the business side, so it was a business major with an emphasis on sports.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the same thing for my master's. And I loved my major. I felt lucky I like fell into it, and that's kind of when I started finding people with similar interests who like sport, and it could kind of branch out from there. So it did get better like mid-sophomore year. But yeah, it's just interesting.
And so now you work at a golf course. I'm assuming telling older men why their elbows hurt and things like that, or?
No, I have nothing to do with golf. I just work on the event side. So we have a pretty nice facility. So I work on like selling that side of it and events happening.
Excellent. It's such an interesting path, right? Like
very.
Like it's a great example for people. Like you were like, maybe I'll be a doctor. Yeah, yep. Not that.
No.
Not this. Like, and I would imagine that you felt supported to kind of go on that journey and
yeah, definitely.
I think it's incredibly important. Like my son is incredibly strong at math, but I just said, I'm like, you don't have to pick going in. Just go in undecided, take some basic math classes, take some other stuff, and figure out what it is you want to, where you want to land. I'm like, listen, don't by your sophomore year if you don't know. I'm gonna start.
I hate that though. Like, why should he at 18 have to figure out where he's gonna land? Like that's it's awful.
Right. And I'll tell you right now that the recruiting process for sports makes it worse because at 18, it's unreasonable to ask somebody what they want to do for the rest of their life. By the way, I think it's unreasonable to ask me what I want to do for the rest of my life, but that's another decision. But when you're recruiting, you start recruiting when you're 16 and coaches come up to you and they go, what do you think you want to do at school? And he's like, what? Was there an answer past hit a baseball for you? Because I hadn't really thought about that. And we always tried to be very, like, I would always say that to him. I was like, look, you don't need to know. If these guys ask you, just tell them what you're strong at. Like, just, and sometimes those coaches just, some of them aren't the most communicative people. Like, they're good at the stuff they're good at.
Right.
And when you spread out to like, hey, tell me about academics, it sort of the conversation goes away a little bit. But he was lucky to find a place where that's not the case. He found a really good spot to land. So
That's
where
awesome.
he can talk to coaches and they're real people and they have like all their thoughts. And there were some places where I was just like, I can't leave my son with you. Like that's how I felt while I was talking. I was like, I don't care how bad you want him or how much money you're going to give him. I don't feel comfortable leaving my child with you.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's not great. Yeah. The kids thing. Okay. The whole, like, seriously, you're 25. Can I give you some great advice?
Sure. Don't have kids? I think I've heard this from you.
Don't get married till at least you're 30 because you have no idea who you are and you don't know anything about yourself. And the kids thing is like dogs. They seem like a great idea when you're looking, but then when they're peeing on the floor or you realize that you can't even ignore them for like a day because it's against the law, like that's when it gets a little cumbersome. Anyway.
Good to know.
Yeah, you're good to know. Some boy one day is going to say something to you and you're going to be like, oh my God, we're going to have a baby. That's when it's time to run away. But I don't want to adjust your life. You do what you want. I say live with your parents forever. They're probably thrilled you're there, honestly.
The best.
So diabetes, how's it going now? Like now you have CGM, right? You said you see the data. Mm-hmm. What did you see and what did you learn from that data for the last 2 years?
I've learned it's scary to sleep at night and not have anybody check on you. It's actually really scary to think about that I went so long without it at night, and it's not like I was setting alarms for myself. I didn't have my parents in college, and it's very scary how many times I go low at night, and I wonder how often that happened in the past and I didn't catch it.
How low?
Well, with the CGM now, it kind of catches it early, so as soon as it starts like screeching at me, I wake up and drink juice or something. But if I go anywhere below like 65, that's low for me, and I can feel it and it's scary. And when I wake up, I'm like, oh, I know something's wrong. But in the past, I've just slept through that.
So let me flip this around and give you a different perspective on what you just said. So first of all, I completely agree with what you said. It's very scary to look up and go, oh my gosh, this is what's been happening and I had no idea. But here's the silver lining of that. Yet here you are.
Right? I question it sometimes. I'm like, how did I get here? I mean, it's great. Obviously, it's the best part. I'm here, but I just wonder what's been happening those 10 years without anything.
But no, I absolutely hear you. But my point is that sometimes I have a dual point. I disagree, and I both agree and disagree with my point, right? So I don't think you should be letting your blood sugar get low overnight. If you can help it, I don't think anybody should. But the fact that it's happened in the past and you're healthy and alive also has to bring comfort. It can't just bring fear.
Yeah.
Like it has to bring some comfort. I'm not saying that when your blood sugar goes to 50, you should just be like, I'm not doing anything about that because that probably used to happen all the time and I'm still fine. Like that's not the way I'm saying.
But it's true. You're right. I've thought about that. I'm like, I wonder, like, what is my body fighting it? Like, do I only have so much fight? Did I use it all up?
Did I use up my fight?
It worries me. I'm like, oh my God, now I'm weak because I depend so much on a sensor. So if I lose the signal, like I think about these things.
But you should, but that's where the comfort should come from. Like that's where I would tell you that in a couple of years with more experience, like the one thing I hear people talk, I'll use this as an example. People talk about like the Dexcom has a 2-hour warm up period, and people say, oh, I'm so lost during that period. It's very scary, and I don't know. I'm like, what did you do before you had it? You lived your whole life without it, but you didn't know, and so now you know what might happen. But the more time you spend with the sensor, the more comfortable you're going to be that you can kind of imagine what is happening. And so to kind of dovetail back around to what we talked about at the beginning, right before you came on and we started recording, about 5 or 7 minutes before, Arden told me it was lunchtime. And we gave her an extended bolus, 10.5 units extended, 20% up front, which means about 2 units went in right away. And we were going to stretch the rest out of over the hour. A few minutes later, as we know, she says, oh my gosh, I'm completely wrong about when lunchtime is. We canceled the extended bolus. I shut her basal off for like 20 minutes just to sort of, horse trade a little insulin with those 2 units that we put in already. She comes back around and everybody heard we bolused 8 or so units instead. And you know what Arden's blood sugar is right now? It's 10:55 right now. She has an early lunch today. So she's been in lunch for 25 minutes. Do you have any idea what her blood sugar is?
Probably right around 100, I would guess.
It's 86.
Oh, that's great.
It's 86 and it's stable. At one point we were 99 diagonal down while you and I were talking. And the point is that I've seen these things happen so many times that I can tell you that this is where I expected her blood sugar to be, even with all of the mess that was made and all of the adjustments and the insulin on and off and all the stuff that we did. This was about my expectation. And there'll be a moment where you, in your life, and I think for everybody listening who has, CGM technology, where you'll have seen it so many times that you can kind of know where your blood sugar is without looking. And that skill should then become comfort while your warm-up period is happening. Or if you're 65 when you wake up and you can think it through I know it's got to be tough to wake up and then make decisions about your health. Like, can you tell me a little bit about that before I go on? Like, what's it like to be zapped out of sleep and then suddenly having to make good decisions about that stuff? Here's a great decision that you will not regret. Dancing4diabetes.com. Dancing, the number 4 diabetes.com. Find them online. Find them on Facebook. Check them out on Instagram.
I mean, I would say I don't always make great decisions at that point. I usually just, my hand springs out. I grab the juice box. I down it. I'm not good at this. I probably shouldn't, but I sometimes don't even wait up to see if it's like going up. I mean, I drank the juice box, so I know it will. But usually then I'm just back to sleep if I can. So for me, it's very quick. That's literally all I do.
And I would imagine that's what most people do. That it's you're trying to, like, it's parents who have that different perspective. It's somebody who's taking care of somebody else who has that different perspective. Because you're like, okay, well now I'm awake. I'm aware of what might happen, so I'll just answer my emails or like listen to Netflix, some music or something. I'll stay up for 20 minutes to check. And that becomes problematic because most of the times you stay up and then what you expect to happen happens and you realize, I could have gone back to sleep. Right. And instead now you're wide awake and it's 3:00 in the morning. You're like, oh my God, what's going on? But I was just thinking moreover, like to me, it's like the idea of like, if I walked up to you, punched you in the side of the head and then asked you like an algebra problem.
Yeah, that's fair. But it's also because we've done it so many times, I think you kind of lose the shock.
Okay.
Except for the sound that my phone makes this awful, awful sound for low blood sugar. And I can change it, but nothing else will wake me up. But I spring out of bed. Like my head hits the ceiling. It's so scary. And it's good because literally any other ringtone will not wake me up. So for me...
Is it the 4 beep slow alarm?
No, yeah, I think it is that one where it's like screeching.
Yeah, the dan, 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 like that one?
It's more than 4, though. I swear it's like 6.
Okay.
Is that the one where it's trending down with the arrow? I don't...
Oh, the one that's like, the one that's basically you can hear in the tone, oh my God, you're going to die, please do something.
Yes, and it's awful, but it's the only thing that gets me up. So I'm awake, and I know I am, and I have slept through that, which is like it freaks me out that I can.
Too, right?
Yeah, my mom comes pounding on my door like, are you okay? I'm like, leave me alone.
I just want to sleep. Hey, wait, is this it?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. But I swear there's like extra beeps at the end, but it could just be my sleep. It's been going off or something. I don't know.
Does your mom's beep too?
No, God, no. I don't share any data with any of them.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, is it echoing from like other parts of the house? You can make this do this, so I just pushed the button.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, Arden's blood sugar still 86, but so you don't share your data with her? I
don't.
How come?
I don't share it with anybody. I don't want to depend on them, and I also like don't want them to know what my blood sugar is because when I'm like mean or something, I was like, your blood sugar is high, and I'm like, leave me alone. Like, you don't know my life, but she's usually right.
Okay.
So I just don't want to like give her that satisfaction that she's right.
You don't.
If that makes sense.
Well, not only does it make sense, but you don't know my life just jumped ahead of Hannah Hates Everything is the title of the episode. So
that's my life. But I guess for me it's weird. It would be weird for them to have that data on their phone. Like it doesn't sound like a bad idea, but to me that's not going to be helpful to me.
That's never been your relationship though with diabetes.
Right. True.
Right. they've always just sort of been in the background being like, hey, you can do it. And
yeah, kind of. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Now, do you think if you got into a situation, do you think you could reach out to them if it happened? Like, say you were, I don't know, going away for business for a couple of nights, and you were like, "Look, Mom, I'm going to be by myself in a hotel room, so I'm gonna let you share my data, but please, I just want to hear from you if I get below this."
I guess I could. I haven't thought about it like that. My parents are gone a lot. Like, they travel and they go see my sisters in college and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I am home alone often, which does give me a little anxiety because I've never lived alone. I've had roommates, and then I moved home, so there's always been somebody around. So, I mean, I actually really like that idea. I've never really thought about it as more short-term as opposed to long-term sharing. But yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I've said a number of times here, like, everything we talk about is, with the caveat that I'm helping Arden, or that I'm around, or I'm watching. And for adults who do live by themselves, that adds a level, I would think, of anxiety that I can't in any way understand. Like, it must borderline on crippling at times.
Yeah, it's not something that I'm interested in, obviously, like, approaching right now, and it does give me anxiety to even think about it.
Right. Where do you try to keep your blood sugar? What's your goal?
I would say like 80, 85 is like my long-term goal, but I've found, I mean, each chapter of my life has brought different struggles with blood sugar, and I've also had different ideas of where I want that blood sugar to stay. Right now, where I am with work, for me, it's hard because I have a lot of client visits. So, like, mid-client visit, if I'm feeling low, or if I know I'm spiking, like, it's not like I can just be like, hey, sorry, like, I have a low blood sugar, I'm going to go, like, drink some juice. Like, I'm still figuring out how that looks.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing where I'm not always at my desk, or I'm not always by my phone, which is where my blood sugar, where my Dexcom is.
Do you think that in a world where you're standing around an event table or something and trying to sell somebody on coming in and using your guy's space or something like that, that's just what I'm assuming you're talking about, and you got like a little vibration on a watch or on a phone, and you looked down and saw that your blood sugar was heading up, do you think if you could bolus through your phone and know you would do that then?
100%. I've actually, like, I don't think about it often, but more than once I've thought about it, that it'd be so much easier to act like I'm texting somebody and, like, be texting my phone. Or not texting my phone, texting my pump to what to do, as opposed, I wear my pump, so it's connected by a tube. I wear it in my bra, like, right between the middle, like, that's where it stays every day. Okay. That's, like, where my comfort place is. So to pull it out, it's a little bit awkward because I'm, like, reaching into my shirt to pull my pump out.
Yes, I see
that. So
that.
for me, that's also awkward. So it's not like I would do that in front of a client, like, pull that out correct and then, like, shove it back in. So
when I'm doing the Omnipod ads, and sometimes I'm like, you don't have to stuff it in your bra, or like, do you sit in your car going,
So I've thought about it, and I just got a new pump in January. So I had the t:slim for 4 years, and I had to make my decision of where I was going next.
Right.
And I was considering all options because I'm super open. I'm not, like, sold on one way or the other. And I'd heard all about your Omnipod, but for me, it just, like, the Dexcom is enough to get questions about. I feel like, not that I have to hide it, but it's much easier to, like, conceal my pump and my pump site. And that Omnipod is so big. So that's just my hesitation. I don't want that on my arm, and then I get all these questions, which isn't a big deal, but I think I'm over it.
Yeah, Arden wears hers, like, on her stomach or her legs, and I can't remember the last time she put it on her arm. Actually, it's been years and years. But I hear what you're saying. Like there's only so much bandwidth you have for explaining what something is to somebody.
Yeah, and I like to explain. Like, I think it's great to educate somebody on what this is, what this disease is, but it's just not something I want in my everyday life.
Yeah, so, I absolutely hear that. I think, too, that Omnipod just is about to release the controller that now will just
I heard
an
that.
Android phone. And I think that's a big deal because you can't think of everybody's perspective. And, like, you just gave me one that's different than mine, you know? Sure. And so I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. And now I'm thinking that thing that looks more like a phone, that is more valuable for someone like you. And then what happens when now your data's together and on that little thing is your Dexcom information and your ability to bolus. And I'm like, oh, the future is is going to fix so many issues for so many different people.
Right.
Like, it's exciting that it's coming faster.
It is actually, it's a really exciting, I felt so stuck in the past, like in high school and college, like this is what I'm resigned to, this is how it's going to be. And then with the Dexcom, it's just brought so much light to managing the disease that I'm excited for what comes next.
I think it's important to stay open-minded to advancements because you definitely don't want to be the person who looks up in a decade and is like, oh, I didn't know anybody was doing this. To bring this background. So my mom was recently diagnosed and she is 100% against anything with technology. She doesn't want to hear it. So she does pens solely. Yep.
I've tried to talk her into letting me put a Dexcom on her. I've tried to educate her more on the pump because I've always managed my diabetes with the pump. So she's not super educated on it, but I've tried to talk to her about the stuff and she is so against it. And it makes me sad for her, but she's also 53 now and she has to make her own decisions about handling this disease, and it's different, but it's very frustrating.
Do you think you could get her to listen to Ryan's episode and then his mom's episode?
Probably, yeah. I think she would be open to it.
Yeah, I think I can see how that would change her. Well,
help.
How long since she's been diagnosed?
2 years ago in November.
Oh, so she's pretty far into it.
Yeah, she's not. It wasn't like it was last month or anything. Now she's got it down. She's actually doing really well with the pens and just the meter. Mm-hmm. But I just feel, I know there's so much more for her that would help her manage the disease. So for me, it's just frustrating that she's not 100% open to it.
I'm telling you right now, you don't even like your mom's your reaction to her diabetes.
I know, right? Can you believe it?
You and I would be so great together. I know it's creepy because I'm 25 years older than you, but we would just sit around and complain about things all day and we'd be so happy.
I know. It's really who I am, though. It's my true colors.
That's amazing. I'm so thrilled that because let me say, and we're way past an hour, but I used up a bunch of your time in the beginning, so I don't care. But it's interesting because if people really listen to you, you're like, I don't really like this, I don't like this, but you're a very upbeat, happy person. You just have definite opinions about some things.
I do. I'm very opinionated.
That's amazing too. I like that a lot. I take back wanting to be coupled with you because I know eventually you would have opinions about me, and I'd be like, oh God.
I know that's kind of scary. That's true.
Are you dating?
No, not currently. Yeah.
I see.
To me, I feel like this disease also brings that next layer for that and I see it online, it's also amazing what Instagram can do with what people post about their lives. And I follow moms of type 1 diabetics. I follow people who are the same age as me. And I see that. And I see some of them who are married or have that boyfriend. And it's kind of they understand it.
Yeah.
And I've seen them get up with them in the middle of the night and that sort of thing. So for me, it just adds a whole nother layer to dating.
And have you dated people where it hasn't gone well?
No, it's never been a bad thing, but it's more felt they don't fully understand it.
And then do you not want to bring them into the understanding, or you do and they don't want to come in, or what's your finding been?
I don't know. I am kind of that person where I'm I can do it myself, so I'm not going to bring you in, but I've tried to make that extra effort to bring them in. I don't know. Just the wrong person.
It seems I see it. I can't imagine. I always tell people, when you find somebody, there's been people on before who help their spouses.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I'm those are special people. That's really amazing. And I've also talked to people listen, my wife's not involved in this. This is my thing. I have it. My husband's not involved with this. Everyone has their own feelings about it, which are all incredibly valid. But I was just wondering for you, does it actually make... So you don't think about dating and then think, oh, I don't want to get involved in this because of my diabetes? Is that
no, that I've never had that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're not going to meet a lot of young guys at a golf course. That's
Zero.
Yeah. You'll be you're going to come home one night and you'll be like,
old
hey,
guys.
Mom, it's Hannah. It's my friend Bill. He's 63.
You don't even know how accurate that honestly is. My mom's always find a cute boy. I'm you don't understand. None of them are under the age of 50 and they don't work. And it's just really funny. She doesn't get it.
Find a cute boy. Find a cute boy. You should answer your mom with everything. When she says, find a cute boy, you should go get a CGM.
I should. That'd be a good one.
We can go back and forth about this for quite some time. But at the same time, I'm about to have, we have people on a lot who use, injections, don't have technology, and are doing very well too. But I think your perspective is like mine, where you got a CGM and then you were like, oh gosh, here's all the things that were happening I didn't know were happening. I wonder what else was happening that I didn't know what was happening. And then you must look at your mom and think, I wonder what's happening to her that we don't know.
I do. I really do wonder sometimes. But I can only make guesses, and I also don't want to interfere on her handling it. But she never could fully understand what a low blood sugar was. Like when I was growing up and I'd be disoriented and shaky and all that. And she just could never totally figure it out. So with her experiencing it, it was a whole new light. And now when she's like it, I'm like, see, now you know how I feel. And I just it's so nice to, not nice, because obviously I would never wish that on her or on anybody.
Right.
But for her to realize those high blood sugars, I'm being short, but it's also, I can't help it. I'm doing the best I can.
It changes the makeup of how your brain works when your blood sugar's
for
high.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's only so much. Novo had these glasses that I think they gave to doctors' offices that kind of mimic a low blood sugar.
Oh,
interesting. And I got to put them on in a room with some people who had diabetes. Some people were like, yeah, it's doing a good job of mimicking it, but still it doesn't give you the actual physiological issues. I like that you said it was nice that she knows now, because I completely understand what you mean. It'd be great if everyone with diabetes could snap their fingers and give their loved ones or their family a real perspective.
Just a second of feeling a low blood sugar, because it's just such a unique experience.
Yeah. No, there's times when you see it happening to someone, and I've seen it happen to Arden, where it's all you can do to stop yourself from just being overwhelmed by the sadness that you feel for them, because it's such a, I don't know, it's just such a helpless thing to watch somebody else go through.
Yeah, and I can because I see it with my mom now, but not so much helpless, but looking from the outside in, it must be so weird to see somebody overtaken by that.
Yeah. It's a good word, too.
I don't know. It's so weird.
You really are overtaken by it. What does success look like moving forward for you with diabetes? What are you hoping to accomplish in the coming weeks and months? Where are you going with all this?
I mean, short term, my goal is always to keep my blood sugar more in, like I said, that 85 range. But long term for me is just moving along with the technology. I'm so thankful for what I have now. But like I said a little while ago, I just can't wait to see where it goes. And sometimes I get antsy and I'm like, why can't it just happen now? But the G6 and things like that help and make it easier to keep a positive positive outlook on it.
Yeah. If it helps you at all, and I just said this to somebody recently, but it won't be on the podcast for a long time. Sorry, everybody. I record ahead. I'm not apologizing for that. The frequency in which things are getting better is so incredibly sped up over how it was even 5 or 6 years ago, definitely over a decade ago. It used to be, oh, someone came out with a new meter. This is very exciting. And then nothing would happen for a year and a half. And then somebody else would be like, we have a new meter too. And I'm like, and this is it. That was how technology grew. And all of a sudden, and I do credit Dexcom with it, because I think Dexcom came into the space and they were like, we're going to keep advancing this stuff quickly. And it pushed everyone else to do it along with them. And now you're getting, hey, from all these companies, we have, low basal suspend, we have, or low IQ, whatever the tandem calls that thing. And then, Medtronic's got this thing, and Omnipod's coming out with the Horizon, and the Dash is coming, and it's stuff's happening really quickly. And some of it's incredibly valuable. So I think you're going to get your wish. I think in the next couple of years, things are going to be, I know people with diabetes are used to hearing, this is going to get cured in 5 years. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
Nobody's curing nothing, as far as I can tell. But but what I do think is that these advancements are coming, and they're not just little advancements anymore. They're giant leaps. So It's a very exciting time. You got diabetes at just the right time.
Did I? I can see the before and the after.
Yeah. Yeah, because your before is not terrible, and your after is going to be amazing. At least you're not like, I used to have to pee on a thing and set it on fire, and then you shoot it to the moon, and when it comes back, you had your blood sugar. Because that. But at the same time, you're going to have a really good perspective in a number of years. So, well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
I want to thank Hannah for not hating the Juicebox Podcast. She hates everything else, but she loves the show. I appreciate her coming on and sharing her story and having this long and fantastic chat with me. I also appreciate the patronage of dancingfordiabetes.com, Omnipod, and Dexcom. You can go to myomnipod.com/juicebox, dexcom.com/juicebox, dancing4diabetes.com, or you can go to juiceboxpodcast.com, and all the links are right there. You know where else the links are? In your show notes to your podcast player. I had planned on sharing some exciting news about something that's coming up really soon on the podcast with you right here, but this episode was already much longer than you're normally used to, so you probably have other things to go get ready for. I'll just tell you next week. It's not a big deal. You'll find out then. How do you keep a podcast listener in suspense?